Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tessie, and I'll be your host together with my colleague Devanshi. Bruce Nagy and Robert Howard are here with us, and they will introduce themselves shortly after. But while we are waiting for a couple more folks to join, I wanted to share a couple of notes. First, who are we? We are a charity that works to transform cities into more sustainable, resilient, and vibrant communities where resources are used efficiently, the air is clean to breathe, and greenhouse gas emissions are minimized. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll provide the link on the chat. We're a Toronto-based organization, and we acknowledge that we are on the land on which we operate is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. These sacred lands are covered by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement forged between the Anishinaabe Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy to peacefully share resources. Wanted to point out that our next webinar on community engagement will be on November 22nd from 2 p.m. and we will discuss how the war in Ukraine affects climate policy. You can register today at the provided link in the chat. And if you want to stay tuned for more of our webinars and the projects that we are working on, you can subscribe into our newsletter provided again, the chat the link is provided in the chat. Lastly, please write your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll have time at the end where we're gonna answer them. And now, without further ado, I'm giving the word to Bruce.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm excited again. I usually am, but I'm particularly excited tonight because Robert Howarth, Professor Robert Howarth from Cornell University is a hero of mine. He's a giant in his field. There's probably no one who knows more about methane on the planet. So I feel honored to have him with us tonight. I'm going to do, as I usually do, a sort of a general introduction. And as I usually do, I have too much material for the time that I'm allotted because I want to leave plenty of time for Professor Robert. And so I'll be speaking quickly. And if you miss anything that you think is important, there are links all through my presentation. Please download it and please follow up those links and find the information that you need. So methane emission, very important topic, very much topical now in the decade to come because it's a short-term problem and opportunity. I guess, but before I get into the material, let me just break it down. I'm going to do about 20 minutes. I'm going to talk, as I said, on general global methane policy, role of government, national governments, local governments, heat pumps, agriculture, and food policy. And Professor Howarth will talk about 30 minutes on the global carbon budget and the methane science. And he'll talk a little bit about buildings, landfill, and fugitive emissions, which I will also talk about a little bit. So he'll connect the dots there. And he'll do spend a little time with the New York Advisory Council. So, you know, case examples. I love case examples. And he's actually a member of that council right now, and he's working on that now, so it's perfect. Before I do talk about Professor Howarth a little more, I just want to say how pleased I am with the series, these webinar series we've been having. In the past, we just had in the spring Mark Jacobson, another giant in his field, who talked about renewables and disinformation, and he has and his team at Stanford have created plans for 100% renewables for all the states in the Union of the United States and for 139 countries, including Canada. So he was great. I did one a week or two ago on U.S. climate laws and how they affect Canadians and other North Americans. And now we have methane tonight. And coming up, we have Professor Peter Strawn, who is from Scotland, and he is going to talk about how the war and the climate, the energy crisis are affecting Europe. And so we'll find out all about Europe and the UK. So I'm pretty excited. So who is Robert Howarth? If you don't know, but I doubt if you don't, but still, he is an internationally renowned research scientist. He's a professor. Oh, I went too far. Oh no, I'm going the wrong way. Just a second. Let me go back. He's a professor of ecology, environmental biology. He's a journal editor, and he's an advisor to several governments. Time magazine named him in its 50 People Who Matter, a Person of the Year issue. He was a speaker at COP26 last year, and he's currently at work, as I mentioned, on New York State's Climate Action Council. So he has published over 200 scientific papers, and his work has been cited in thousands more. So thank you, Robert, and we will get to you as fast as I can. Who am I? If you've been on here before, you know I'm a columnist, I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant, written about 250 articles, actually more, on climate solutions, the book Clean Energy Age. And I'm very excited about an article I have coming up in Corporate Knights magazine, good publication, goes with the Washington Post and with the Globe and Mail, and it's all about green buildings at scale. So methane emissions, let's have a look. Okay, so here we are. We have methane emissions in Canada and methane emissions in the USA. They're mostly the same. It's higher, of course, oil and gas in Canada, because we have the tar sands or the oil sands. I guess coal is a bigger factor in the USA. And there's two real categories. There's food and agriculture and fossil fuel extraction that are the big contributors to methane. And okay. And so, and I guess to make it even simpler to understand or grasp in your mind, if you need to, the agriculture is about half and food systems and landfills, and the other half is fossil fuels. And so with regards to city governments, we have a lot of municipal people in the audience tonight. Food and landfills, those are both responsibilities of city governments. And reducing fossil fuel use, that's a responsibility of pretty much everybody on the planet. And there are many ways that cities and local governments get involved in that. We're going to talk about some of those. So landfill food systems, I guess about a third of the food produced globally is either it lost or wasted. It's generating methane in landfills. And the losses, another problem is that losses needlessly increased waste management costs. And then I guess third, most cities are home to people who are suffering from food insecurity and hunger and malnutrition. So if we can solve those three problems with one goal, then let's make it a goal for 2030, and let's manage food waste. Let's recycle properly, especially food. Let's safely dispose of some of the solid waste, which might include things that other non-organic things that rot and mostly organic things. And let's encourage a shift towards a plant-based diet, which is a little bit, if you've been on here before, you know that I'm hesitant with that one, because half the world, the Western world, is very happy to say, let's go vegan, but the Eastern world is just only now affluent enough to eat their meat. It's not going to be an easy sell in the eastern part of the world. We have some very good records from some cities, and it seems like I travel a lot, and it seems like the cities are either doing a great job or a poor job. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground, but I hope I'm wrong. Vancouver, Singapore, Copenhagen, Denmark, Helsinki, Finland, San Francisco, and New York, those are the ones that I guess can be remarked upon by me. They have a lot of different ways that they support reducing food waste, and I guess there's a couple other cities, Milan and Austin, shown down on the right on this screen, that have used some interesting ways. So I guess cities can support food redistribution through food banks, obviously. They can ease restrictions and regulations to make it easier to donate food and also to move food around, because sanitation rules are pretty strict in some places. And then I guess Milan offers a tax reduction to foods and restaurants and supermarkets that donate their surplus food. So that's a way that cities can do something. I guess in many cities, this is one that I hadn't thought about. The loss happens before it reaches the consumers. So in the transportation delays. So I guess in my own city in Toronto, they have this huge hub where all the chefs and restaurant and fresh food stores go in the middle of the night and pick their fresh food from where the farmers are coming in at the other side. And I guess a lot of cities have a hub like that or more than one. And those kinds of things, I guess in some cases, cities have control over them or have some involvement in them and may or may not be they to help with the sanitation and the refrigeration in those areas. So that's something that I hadn't thought of. In Kenya, they did something that is food for thought, I guess. Dried mango products. So they dry the mangoes to extend their life as the day or the week goes on, I guess. And I think that could apply in many different ways, not just mangoes. So that's something you think of. The right-hand column talks about talking to restaurants and talking to stores and saying, look, you can get a 14-to-1 ROI. Actually, to be honest, I don't think that the ROI is at the top of the agenda for many people now. Even restaurateurs are thinking of the environment and the health of their patrons. I'm going to show you this, only a little bit of this video. It's a good video in some places. It's long. It's not great in others, but I'll show you a little bit of it. This is San Francisco.
More than 3,100 miles. That's a distance from Florida to Washington. Things are only expected to get worse. Thankfully, some cities such as San Francisco are paving the way and trying to change the way we think about trash. San Francisco plans to become zero waste by 2020, which is a pretty ambitious but awesome goal. And this is the main nerve center for all of the city's recyclables. This is where everything ends up to be sorted and processed. What is zero waste?
An idea. It means sending next to nothing to landfills or incinerators.
In 2009, the city passed a law requiring residents and businesses to sort their waste into recyclables, compostables, and landfill trash. Recology is the private company that handles it all.
When I started at Recology 23 years ago, the recycling rate was around 38%. Today, we've more than doubled that.
So far, San Francisco has diverted 80% of its waste away from landfills.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that. You have it if you want it. That's a resource. The link is on the same screen. You can go to it. I think diversion rates are interesting. Toronto at one point had a very high 80%, but that was residential. And I don't know what happened in the pandemic. Now they're quoting 52% for residential, for total. And still they have a high number for residential, but I think so some cities are having challenges with, I guess, the commercial thing. So that's an example. So here's another resource that you can use that Canada has published. So ways to reduce emissions from solid waste landfills. So there's a link there for you. British Columbia, they've gone, okay, this is into the broader discussion of tonight, which is agriculture in general. So livestock and manure management, soil conservation, energy conservation, fuel switching, energy on the farm, putting your solar panels on the barn. So there's a link there for that. So how does the UN see methane emissions? They've sort of got these four categories. So manage your manure, gastroenteric releases, diet that I touched on before. And I guess in the East, rice is a problem. So they have some studies saying that wetting and drying applications can help with that. Now here's my area that's I'm a little stronger in buildings. So just reducing emissions, whether they be carbon or methane, but the buildings, electrifying buildings, this is what cities do. Electrify buildings, you have the final approval on all the projects by the developers. You have a lot of city facilities yourself that you can green, and you have fleets. You can invest in transit, a huge area for most cities. More investment in transit is better for fewer cars. And if you are going to have cars, you can invest in EV charging and certainly walking, cycling, those areas. I was surprised. So if you're going to do, a cycling lane, looking at the picture on the top left, do a good job at it. This looks like one in Europe. It's very nice because, it's sort of two-way traffic completely separated, or the pedestrian mall top right, do a good job of it, or the jogging trail on the bottom left. So cities, like you can do it. I see some terrible ones and I see some great ones, but I was very surprised because I used to work in city government and I kind of laughed and I thought, well, I'm focusing my energy on transit because it's hundreds of thousands of riders and cyclists are only tens of thousands. But I quickly learned from case studies that if you improve your bike lanes, all of a sudden, even in cold climates, you increase your numbers of cyclists incredibly. These three pictures on the right are all electric battery, electric buses, electric LRT, electric subway train, and the one on the left is a BRT, bus rapid transit. Again, seems like a simple idea, separate the lanes, dedicated lanes for the buses, but it's a bit of work, do it right, and it's really efficient. And more importantly, let me go back, the quality of the ride. I mean, I was in Nice last year and they have this tram system. It's so easy to get on, so easy to get off, so easy to pay, so easy to be anywhere in the city in 15 minutes. So I guess the quality of, what you have to offer your citizens really makes a difference in how much they are used. This is more of a future screen. I'm watching my time and I'm already quite late, so I won't talk about this much. The charging station in the bottom left, it doesn't exist. It was the first prize in a design contest. The gentlemen in the top left are battery gurus. They put a battery into the city of Stratford in Ontario, which is being used for emergency power, and it's become a very good project, and I have more on that if anyone wants it. The picture on the right is Dubai. I think it's actually a real photo, not a drawing or not an illustration, and those are greenhouses in the middle, buildings with solar all over them on the left, and solar carports on the bottom right. Buildings in Canada and in North America. Okay, the top two are in Canada. One is obviously multifamily and one's a single family house. The bottom three are all in America and they're important for different reasons. Babcock Ranch, bottom left, that's the place where down in Florida, Hurricane Ian hit and wiped out Fort Myers. And this place, Babcock Ranch, was about 20 miles away. I interviewed the civil engineer they hired to make it hurricane proof. And she said, we just work with all the water flows. We don't fight Mother Nature. The one on the bottom right is a very important project. It just looks like the corner of a building, but it's Casa Passiva in New York. And it's important because it's a retrofit. And there are 9 buildings. The architect is named Chris Benedict. She's working on that and she's brilliant. Portland, Oregon, that's one of the oldest passive house affordable housing complexes, and these three are from that same article that I have been talking about. Big, large passive houses. At least the one on the top right and the one on the bottom are both passive houses. One is an office tower in Boston, the other one's in Harlem, and it's affordable housing. The one on the top left, that's Toronto condos. That's a whole other story. Ask me if you want to know it. It's brilliant that there are now a few dozen condos, large condos in Toronto that have geothermal under them, and that's one of them. I forget its name, Lillian Park. Yeah, that's a story all on its own. That could do a whole webinar on that. Okay, so are any of the governments in the world doing things? Yes, they are. The US government is doing things, and I think we all know that the Inflation Reduction Act made some noise in the United States. And the reason is, if you look at the incredibly dense list I have on the left, those are all demand side interventions. So they're all things to get us, moving on solar and insulating our homes, and tax credits for heat pumps, and for manufacturing of heat pumps in America, and you know, all of the good demand side things. And I think they're very necessary and topical now, because a little later in the last 5 minutes I do have, I'm going to be a little cynical about what the industry itself, the fossil fuel industry, is not doing or is saying they're doing. So we really do have to work on the customer side of that equation and move ourselves. They also, in the United States, the Infrastructure Investment Act, they fixed up their charging infrastructure. They put money aside, a lot more money aside, for electric buses, you know, infrastructure for renewables, lots of interesting stuff in that. So transit, urban rail, even electric ferries. That ferry boat that's in the picture there on the bottom left is actually in Canada, near Kingston, Ontario. There's a couple islands. They ordered 2 of them from Norway. I think it's electric. Okay, so why am I complaining? Well, the Stanford study that came out recently showed, and now they have the satellites up there, so now they can measure the methane, and they don't have to necessarily believe what the industry is saying. And they found, this study found that they did it in the Permian Basin, okay, that 9% of all the methane produced in the region is being leaked. So they're not only, and the silly thing about this is that cities, the industry can make money by fixing the leaks, and they can, it pays for itself, and they'll probably ask for a handout anyway, but it does pay for itself. So they should cap those leaks. The McGill study, this is McGill University in Montreal, they found that in Canada, the underestimated amount of methane is 150%. In the US, it's less, 20%. So, you know, they used geospatial and statistical analysis, and they studied, I guess, 500 or 600 wells. And they're saying there are 4 million abandoned wells in the USA and 370,000 in Canada. Remember, that's 370 number, because I'm going to mention it again in a few minutes. Is the White House doing other things? Well, they had this policy that the EPA had in 2016, and the Biden and Harris administration seemed to be pushing hard on that. So that's good. And they also had, and that was for landfills, and they also had one, the EPA in 2015, that was for reducing waste in landfills, and they're pushing for a 50% goal by 2030, which I think is pretty good for a big country like that. So yeah, so they are reinforcing those things. And then coming back to the IRA, which I just mentioned before, they also added a punishment, a little punishment, but it comes with a soft, it comes with a landing space. So what it is it's a methane fee now, and it's assessed to all of the oil and gas companies and all their facilities. And however, if they take advantage of 850 million in grants to fix their facilities, then they won't have to pay the fee. It'll be waived. So, you know, this always seems to be the way the hands come out for R&D or something like that. But in any case, at least I'll try not to be so cynical, and I'll try to get over to Robert. Here's the most cynical I get. I used to work in PR and advertising, and I read the Canada CA page all about reducing methane. It says all the right things, but I wasn't born yesterday, okay? And so it says, you know, that Canada is the first country to commit to 75% methane reduction by 2030. Well, that sounds fantastic. I hope they do it, but they haven't been doing a great job usually. Lately. So Alberta's even worse. There's that 170,000 abandoned wells the industry is reporting, whereas the McGill study said it was 370,000. So that's interesting. And the Alberta thing, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to study this, and we need more research and development to do this. They say now they're going to put solar panels, they're going to use solar power to pump more oil and gas I'm getting too cynical. I'm going to hand it over to Professor Robert Howard now. And Desi, could you please switch us?